Hi, I'm Rakia, and these are my group members.
I'm Emily.
I'm Yara.
And today we'll be interviewing Barbara McNally, a biology teacher at Morristown High School.
This will be about the experiences she had in her youth during the 1970s.
We talk about the Vietnam War and women's rights.
During Vietnam, while soldiers were at war, the home front was not as strong and unified as it should. President Nixon was not very trustworthy and honest to the citizens of America. Vietnam was very dangerous and many people wished for their loved ones to return. Nixon announced that troops would be leaving Vietnam, but instead he was planning to move troops to Cambodia. When citizens of America found this out, they were highly upset and enraged. This caused an uproar on college campuses, for example, Kent State. Students at Kent State burned books, buildings, and had riots to show their disagreements of the war. As a result of this, the National Guard was called in and they tear gassed the campus and 4 students were killed from the National Guard's live ammunition. This was a shock to the entire country as they thought things would never escalate that high.
So the first thing I'd like to start off with was what was the name of your high school and where was it located?
New Milford High School. It is a small town in Bergen County. It is the oldest town in Bergen County,
Also, the word Vietnam was very controversial in school. I know that some schools tended to gear away from it. So how did students feel about the war in your school?
So when I was in 8th grade, and in 8th grade we went to our high school because we didn't have a middle school at the time, and the students who were anti the war had a sit-in, and what they did is they coerced the 8th graders and 9th graders to come to the cafeteria on the ruse that they were giving something out, giving away free food, and they locked us into the cafeteria. So here I was part of a sit-in that I didn't even know what was going on, and that became a big issue.
So with the sit-in, did you, even though you didn't know about it, when you finally figured out what the sit-in was about, did you agree with the people that were putting people in the sit-in, or did you disagree with them?
I'm pretty much a rule follower, so I really did not like the way, I really felt like I was held hostage, and it became a big thing, and I thought if people had their views that they wanted to express about the war, that there was a better way to handle it, not keeping young students hostage. So I think my first reaction was kind of dismay and anger that I got caught up in that, and so initially I didn't even have the chance to react to philosophically what they were doing because I felt that they handled it in such a poor manner.
Did any of the students get in trouble for basically putting other students in hostage? Sorry.
I don't really remember specifically, but I know it was a big deal, and it was one of those where a lot of parents were called in, and again, because I was probably on the younger end of that and just got let go, I didn't want, and students were allowed to smoke then in high school, so we also had a smoking lounge. So I felt that there was a connection between some of the kids who were smoking and the kids who were cutting class and the kids who held, and I just disassociated myself from that group of people. So I probably didn't spend a lot of time thinking about what they were actually doing because it was just so, their persona was so against the grain of how I was brought up.
As you were in high school during the Vietnam War, how did you feel about it?
So as a freshman, I think I just knew that we were at conflict, and I think my main concern was knowing that friends were being drafted. Didn't have any relatives, being the oldest child of a family. I didn't have relatives that were being drafted. Then as the thing that really bothered me the most was probably my awareness of on TV every night there was how many soldiers had died, and that number was posted every single night, and that's my biggest memory. Later, when I became aware post-Vietnam of things like Agent Orange and things like that, it gave me a different view of some of the things that happen on war other than just, quote, human killing of each other.
While you were in high school, did you have were you aware of the Kent State,
university protesting, and did you have any feelings about like Nixon's speeches during?
To where at Kent State, that was around the time that I was looking into what colleges, and that was the first time that I was really aware of the impact that young adults had on our society, and it kind of made me rethink about different parts of the United States and their thought processes and how they viewed different things. I now know that we are very polar, whether we're the Midwest or one of the coasts, and I was thinking as I'm going to college how that might influence my choice of college as to what kind of unrest there might be, the philosophies of the students. I don't think, it was probably the first time that it brought that to my mind. Nixon, I was really kind of intrigued with once it was brought to light, some of the things he did. As probably a young adult, I read many of the books that were written about Watergate, and that's probably impacted my political views to this day. I don't trust politicians as a whole. I feel they don't ever represent me. I feel like I'm a moderate, and now we've become more and more polar. So that was probably the beginning of that influence of being aware of the different parties and how they interacted with each other.
Okay. In the 1970s, Congress passed Title IX on education amendments. This prohibited sex discrimination in any federal assisted educational program. Also, the Equal Rights Amendment, which was passed in the Constitution, which prohibited laws that discriminated based on sex. Although these laws seemed to only benefit women, they benefited both men and women, especially in the young adolescents. Many adolescents were happy that these laws were in place because it moved away from the stereotypical gender roles and they were able to express themselves freely.
So how did you feel about girls and boys integrating into one gym class, and how did it impact you as a woman?
So Title IX did not happen until when I graduated high school. So my whole experience in high school where boys and girls were in two different gyms. Each class had to have, two different gyms. The girls were in the auxiliary gym, the boys were in the regular gym. There were different rules to the sport. So for instance, basketball had different rules for the girls and the boys, and this was even when you played intramurals. So the girls, for instance, you could only bounce the ball 3 times and then you had to pass it. So you couldn't have anybody drive down the court. Then when I went to college, because I went to a private school, they actually did not have phys ed for women. So I took gym. We had to wear these awful gym suits. You had to wear the gym suit. If you didn't wear the gym suit, you couldn't take gym. If you didn't take gym, you couldn't pass gym. If you didn't pass phys ed, you couldn't graduate. So we all wore these awful gym suits and kind of were jealous that boys got to wear like athletic shorts and t-shirts, and we had to go out and buy and wear these red awful gym suits. So integrated, I've never had gym class ever where I've had boys and girls in the same class. Now looking at it now, I'm not sure it's the best thing for all students. I think some girls who really want to be competitive, kind of a tomboy, which I would have been, I think they may want to be with boys, but I think some...
Were there any other forms of discrimination like towards females in your town?
In my high school, the discrimination was when you took your elective, girls were automatically put into sewing and cooking, and boys were automatically put into woodshop and auto mechanics. And my dad was an auto mechanic, and I knew more about that than I did about sewing, and so that used to kind of get me upset that I couldn't participate in auto mechanics. Sewing, I didn't have a big interest. I guess now it helped. I can sew a button on if I wanted, but it really... And then the other thing in high school was if you took typing, you got put in class for typing for a secretary. You did not get to take typing, like how to prepare for college and type papers, etc. So about halfway through the year, I begged my mother to get me out of typing, and I just said, I'll learn it by myself, that this wasn't helping me. Experience.
How do you feel, like knowing your classmates, how do you think they would have felt if Title IX did happen when you were still in high school?
Oh, I know some, like, probably I would have been one of the people who absolutely would have wanted to compete with the boys in basketball or softball, but then I look at my daughter who just hated every minute of it and, you know, was more worried about what the perception was. So I think she's someone who would have probably done better if there was all female. My son was big, as you guys know, so it always scared me because, for instance, if he played volleyball, he would come home and tell me how he spiked the ball, and I'm thinking there's some little 90-pound girl on the other side who's going to be at the opposite end of that ball. So I have mixed feelings and mixed perceptions through my children's eyes versus through my eyes.
How did people react to the new dress code for women?
So you have to remember this was kind of some of the end of the hippie days. So people were wearing low-rise jeans and bell-bottoms. So everybody couldn't wait to wear those pants to school instead of just wearing them after school. I think for the most part, teachers still could not wear jeans or pants. It took another year or so before pantsuits could come in for teachers, and then teachers had regular pantsuits, kind of like what you would associate with the Hillary Clinton look,
Okay.
matching jacket. Wore stockings, never went without stockings if you had a skirt on, or tights or pantyhose. Pantyhose kind of came into fashion when I was in high school. Before that, you wore stockings, so that was a relief to get past all that cumbersome part of your wardrobe. And then my father was really strict about it. So I went out shopping. I can remember some of the pants that I first owned and the tops that matched, but was not allowed to wear jeans, even though I wore jeans probably every day during the summer because I grew up in New York State on a farm during the summers, but yet could not wear them to high school. I did not wear them, and as a result, I guess in rebellion, when I went to college, coveralls, like overalls became popular, and that was my go-to outfit on any exam day. You could always tell when I had a test because I wore my overalls and flannel shirt.
You mentioned a protest before about this new dress code.
Oh, yes. So what happened was a young man was getting denied his diploma because part of the dress code was how long boys could have their hair. So this is when boys first started growing their hair long, and he had a ponytail, and they told him if he did not follow the dress code with his hair, he would not get his diploma. So he protested, and he actually took it to court, and that's what changed dress codes in all public schools in New Jersey.
So you think that case helped women's rights out?
I think that case helped to loosen women's dress code, but it helped the rights of both male and female to be able to express themselves in their wardrobe.
I hope you enjoyed our documentary. Now we're going to reflect on what we had to talk about with Miss McNally.
During the interview, Barbara McNally talks about untrustworthiness, and I agree with this because during Richard Nixon's presidency, he was very untrustworthy to his citizens.
Barbara McNally also brought up how young women were put into different gyms as guys, and they were also made to wear clothes they didn't like. This brought light to how things have changed from then to now.
She also mentioned how girls were automatically put into sewing class and cooking class, and men were automatically put into mechanics. I hope you enjoyed everything. Thank you for watching.